All right, you want to just jump right into this?
Yeah. Is the
All right.
stream on?
Yeah, it's streaming and microphone's on. So
All right.
okay. Hello, I'm Art Francisco.
And I'm Andrew G.
And this is the Marxist line. To find out more about the Marxist line or to get a hold of us, please use the link below, the subreddit Marxist underscore USCA.
And today, in current events, I guess we're going to be talking about the fallout from the George Floyd murders. And then I guess the rest of this week is a lot theory based, isn't it? All right. So you want to give a little gloss over on that?
Yeah, we'll talk about Left Voices article on the American Revolutionary Press tradition, as well as the Michael Roberts presentations, a little bit about that, and then we'll spend most of the time there talking about the new Hakim video. I think it's new. Revolution, a how-to guide.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about this reflections on 2020 by Socialist Resurgence. And it's not, so it's 2021 now, of course. And 2020 is this big year of, of change with the pandemic, and of course there's like the George Floyd trial that was going on and mass protests, and we know that Derek Chauvin was convicted, which is a good thing, and there is with this, with all of this, there's kind of like a need to kind of reflect and summarize what is it that we just went through last year, and in order to chart the way forward. And so I understand the need to kind of summarize that. And Socialist Resurgence, I mean, we kind of have I'd say we have kind of a we have a long relationship, whether they recognize us or not. We have a relationship with Socialist Resurgence, whether we like it or not, because one of the people that helped to start the show was from Socialist Resurgence.
Yeah. And I would like to, I want to leave this to our later article, but I do want to bring this example up. And just since you said, because we're talking to these, or like our connection to them, and these people are students, like educated, university educated, and I've said this before, and there needs to be better sourcing. And like, for instance, and I'm just going to bring this up now and then talk a little bit more down below in our further article. But it says, because I was interested about comparing how many officers, because it says only 8 officers have been convicted in murder since 2005, despite killing at least 15,000 people in that time. And I couldn't find like a source for that. Like,
Right.
because I wanted to compare the rates, and I found one source that had said it was half of that officers were killed, and I want to, and then I want to compare Canada's in the last 15 years, and then I went on down this big deep rabbit hole. So I just would like to see more things like that, and then it brings out a quote from Nature, and I tried to find that, and I think, and I'm just going to leave it there. I'll talk more about it more when we get into the tradition of a revolutionary press, in the tradition of in the tradition of Lenin, because this is going towards what I want to say about that. But that's just my point. So you can continue on with your comment there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like looking at the year past. You know, Socialist Resurgence talks about like you know, Democrats or capitalist party, you know, kicking cops out of the unions. And it talks about, in its last paragraph, it mentions, excuse me, that that working people and need to have their own political party, like mass political party, workers' party. And it says it needs to be armed with the revolutionary program as a fundamental step to smashing capitalism for good. And this is something that we hear about, we read all the freaking time, right, Andrew? I mean, like in almost every Trotskyist essay, in almost every essay, but like in every little statement, we read this same regurgitated line. It's like a copy and paste. It's literally copy pasta at this point.
Yeah,
and
that's what when I was talking to Art earlier, we were saying like these Hassan videos are refreshing because it's not the same. It seems like they're saying the same things
we'll
over
get to
again.
his son later. Let's save that for a minute. Like,
Yeah, but like that's exactly, it's the same stuff.
right. And like, you know, and you know, I've been mentioning this is copy pasta for like 2 years now. And because I've read this for maybe a decade whenever I read this stuff, right? And I've read it for 10 years. And you know, and more than that. But the thing is, like, this all sounds well and good, but like the reason we've started this show is because, you know, we like decided it's necessary to study the present revolutionary milieu, so to speak, you know, the present Marxist community. Like, where are Marxists at today? In, you know, well, when we started, it was what, 2019? So
We started the show that, but we were organizing it before that. But yeah,
right.
finally got it. Yeah.
And so so where are Marxists today in the here and now? You know, like, what are they doing? What are they saying? Like what are their attitudes? What are their positions? And so so we started this as a serious study to figure this out. Like, and we talked about extending it to the rest of the left, but you know, we felt we'll just start with the Marxist community. And so where are they at today? And Socialist Resurgence was invited. Well, one of their members was invited, and of course that hand extends to the rest of their members as well, invited to take part in that, you know, and they were not interested. And I hope that in the future they gain interest in it. But it's like, they know about the show, you know, they know about the Reddit. You know, I've talked to them, and the thing is, like, they have not shown like any kind of plan to make this happen, you know, even to study, you know, where we're at.
But even like, I mean, like as we said in the past, it's become so cliquey. But you know, like Rosa Luxemburg and Lenin had huge disagreements, but it was open, written, vocal response back and forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how it should be working. You know, lots of leaders like that back then had big differences, but it wasn't, but they were communicating. And it advanced because of it at the time, because of these things. You know, there, you know, obviously some shitty, you know, things happen, and you know, some, revolution went the wrong way, but it got off the ground through that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There needs to be communication. And the problem I have with this paragraph is it doesn't mention the fact that there's like almost zero communication within the Marxist community itself. We're not talking about the anarchists and the rest of the left yet. Like there's nothing, okay? And like even just with the Marxist community, there's very little communication that goes on. We attempt to cover it in this show on a weekly basis, and the show, like, we want more communication. Like that's why we do this show. We're not doing it like, I know I pick on all these different groups every week, and a little probably more than you, Andrew, but but even though I might come off as a bully sometimes, like my intent is actually to bring different groups together, at least enough to be able to talk to each other, as adults.
Yeah. I don't think I think real educated Marxists are not, you may sound like you may say yourself a bully, but I've read like statements from Lenin and from Rosa Luxemburg criticizing each other and using, she's out to lunch or blah 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 sort of thing. And I mean that's just, you shouldn't be afraid to be critical or be criticized. I mean that's how you learn from each other. And I mean it's just ego getting in the way when you can't take it, when you can't come back with an argument. I mean, and if
I mean the thing is, if we're going to talk about a revolutionary program, we have to first talk about the contradictions between revolutionaries and the revolutionary movement, and like, because like who's going to come up with this revolutionary program, right? Who's going to promote it, like and like if we're serious about like smashing capitalism, we have to think of the steps that it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, just saying smash capitalism is going to get us even less there.
Right. Yeah, and to me, just saying smash capitalism, to me, without talking about the concrete steps to get there, just saying, hey, we need a revolutionary program without talking about the actual concrete steps to getting there, to me, that's just liberal dreaming. That's just liberal nonsense. Like, because we're not actually talking about the concrete steps.
Yeah, and I mean, it took Marx 3,000 pages in Capital to explain why. Yeah. And he wasn't even finished.
And this isn't just Socialist Alternative, of course, that's saying this. This is like, this kind of statement is everywhere. Like, I mean, we're constantly reviewing these kinds of statements. And so, this isn't just like a specific attack on Socialist Resurgence, but, I mean, this is a criticism that I extend out through the rest of the Marxist community as well.
The sad thing is too, is that, not all, but a lot of articles still have some, small good points. And, even if some of these groups work together once in a while on some articles, on one specific article, on one subject, would be better and produce a really good article as opposed to like 10 shitty articles that, maybe are not even proofread properly, as the next one exposes. Like there's 3 lines that were repeated. Shit. I mean, that's just sloppy. But yeah, I mean, we haven't even gotten there. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, just a note, Andrew, like just a technical note. I noticed that for some reason I'm streaming at it looks like I might be streaming at 360p instead of 1080 or 720, and I'm not quite sure why.
So are you gonna try and Can you do that on your? Is that an automatic setting, or is that because you're?
I'm not, to be honest, I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
Is that in OBS? You want to fix that, or try and fix that before we move on?
Um, I'm wondering why. I do kind of want to fix it. If it's a quick fix, I want to fix it.
Okay.
Let me check the. Let me check the actual stream to see if it's just the preview that's at 360p. Okay, I think we're good actually. It looks good. I was kind of freaking out there.
Okay.
I looked at the preview. I was like, oh, it looks really grainy for some reason, and I wanted to make sure that it looked okay. Okay, so let's talk about the Communist Party of Canada real quick.
Yeah.
So okay, so Jacobin magazine. Let me switch this over, by the way. So Jacobin magazine, recently decided to try and tackle the Communist Party of Canada, and to me, I mean, looking at this, it seems like they're leaving a lot out.
Me too. I mean, and to me, it makes it more. It hypes it more than I think it was and that was any different than the international labor movement worldwide at the time in most of these developed countries or more developed countries. I don't really, I mean, I'm just wondering how, everybody in Canada knows about the Winnipeg general strike, but there was murders in the US too over like big massive strikes and stuff. Yeah, I think this was I agree. Like, I mean, I'm not that, I need to brush up on my communist history too, but yeah, like more of my problems here were like repetitive sentences here. But yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, they tell about all of these great leaders, and like we were saying before, it doesn't really say what happened. It just ends and say, well, what can we learn, or what happened if it was so successful at the time? What happened? So I think you're right. There is a big part of the story missing here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think that it kind of hypes it up a little bit more than what they should. I mean, they don't really break down exactly what happened exactly, and
And I would like to, I would also maybe like to, and that's another part too. There, I mean, Jacobin did. I mean, I can't remember. Do they allow commentary? I mean, I would.
oh, like, can you comment on their pieces?
Yeah.
No,
No. Yeah. So I
no.
mean, I would
Jacobin
like to
does
see.
not allow you to comment on their pieces.
I maybe see a back and forth engagement between the Communist Party of Canada and Jacobin, or some link to their, some statements made by them or whatever. At least drawing. I don't see what the point of this is, especially if it ends like this. You know, it just gives this, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we read a lot of these kinds of history articles, right? And usually when I read these history articles from Jacobin or sometimes even from Cosmonaut, I mean, it seems like they're. I mean, I think sometimes Cosmonaut's better. I mean, sometimes it's worse, but most of these history articles that we read, it seems like they're problematic.
yeah.
You
I
know.
will give it to Jacobin. They are better. They provide hyperlinks to like sources and stuff, so which I think is important. Hyperlinks or, you know, citations in their articles. I think, you know, when we get to, you know, our next article, I'll talk more about that. I do like the hyperlinks in here, but you know,
Yeah.
besides that, anything else you want to talk about on this one?
Um. Like I do think it's important to look at um the history of the like Communist Party of Canada. Um. But I it's important to like for us to kind of unpack like its failings, right? And why it's become irrelevant. And and I think the article fails completely in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it does too, and I mean, it talks about Oshawa, and Oshawa is like basically the Detroit of Canada for auto manufacturing. And I mean, just, you know, a few years ago there were massive closures and stuff, and the union leadership did little to try and, you know, they talk big talk, but I mean, nothing really happened about, you know, transforming them into electric car fucking manufacturing places or whatever and stuff. But you know, I mean, yeah, I mean the labor movement is definitely, you know, not very strong here.
Yeah. Um. So let's while we're talking about history and such, maybe we should just talk about this Left Voice article. This is kind of like part two of their because they had another article that we talked about the other week.
Yeah,
Um. And and so this is kind of like the part two of that, and basically you know, talking about Left Voice and how it's how it's different, how it's like similar, and it basically this article here mentions several different important, what I think are pretty important newspapers to look at as basically a base model for Left Voice, including like Daily Worker, which is CPUSA, and Iskra, which is Lenin's newspaper, and the Black Panther, for the Black Panther Party,
yeah,
like the Militant, which is Socialist Workers Party, that was like the early Trotskyist party, um, and the Organizer, and so basically Left Voice, in summary, it says that it's trying to be a mixture of Iskra, which was Lenin's paper, which looked like this, by the way. This is actually what it looks like. I have Lenin's collected works, and this is what you see when you look at Iskra pictures. Um, it looks like a wall
yeah,
of words, literally, and that's how Lenin would do it. Like Lenin was not. He was actually completely against dumbing down things for workers. Like he made it a point not to treat workers like children. Um, and and so if you look at this, and then you compare that, like you can see down the road, like this is kind of an American style of doing newspapers here. Appeal to Reason, that's the Socialist Party USA, I think. And I mean, you see it, and it's like it's clear. Like headlines take up half the space. Half the space of this page is headlines. And the militant is far more dense. Like this was the one that was basically managed by Trotsky. It was more dense in its early stages. It looked more like this in its early stages, and then later it looked more like this in like the 1960s. So this is 60s, 70s, and as far as density, and if you look at like today, it's far less dense. And so there's a dumbing down basically, and so they're saying that they're going to be like Iskra and the organizer. The organizer is basically a workers. It's like a workers' newspaper for strikes and stuff, for Teamsters, and which is a militant newspaper. Another one would be the Waterfront Worker, which is when I was running the control line. That's what I based the control line off of, the Waterfront Worker. But I don't think that Left Voice is like the Iskra.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that is like a very.
I myself, I was like, of where this article came from, and then it definitely was sounded Trotskyist, and then
That's very absurd to me.
Yeah, and then it says, and it bothers me. It says, we take advantage of 21st century technology unavailable to forebears that allow us to disseminate our press quickly and widely, and advantages amplified by it. But I mean, this is what pisses me off, is that no, they're not taking, advantage of the technology. There's forums that people can discuss, but they don't have discussion on that. They can easily cite their sources, which is a big problem, which is why people believe different kinds of shit. And I'm a firm believer, if we're going to put out revolutionary paper and not dumb it down, it needs to be explained well, it needs to be backed by sources. And if you look at any serious writings by Marx, by Lenin, by Luxemburg, who are all highly educated, footnotes in their readings, sources, big lists of all of them. If they want to be, if want to be taken seriously, then we need to start doing that. And it's easier than ever to do that kind of sourcing compared to like Marx's days, where they'd have to look through mountains of books and write everything else out now. And I want to do a little tutorial about this on our show, or maybe put it up on our website on the software that I told you to look at.
Okay.
And it's an easy footnoting thing for when you're writing, and it's awesome. Like, it's awesome. It's so easy to use, and you can just for everything. And you don't even have to. You can put the ISBN number, or you can just click on a web page and it pulls out the metadata and everything like that. And
well, there's no excuse. Like, I mean, if you're gonna cite, I mean, it's not hard to cite sources.
Yeah, but I know, and I'm like, it's easier than ever than to just, if you don't want to. But yeah, I mean, they're talking about technology, but just because it's on digital in this, it's not, it's not taking advantage of it all. And I mean, they're pretty lofty in their conclusions, because I don't see I don't see their writing as.
Well, there's very big difference, I think, between Left Voice and Iskra. Like, not just politically. I think there's some political differences, but also like you're talking about sources. Lenin would do lengthy quotes of his political opponents, of what he was criticizing, and he would basically say, hey, this is what they wrote it in,
Exactly.
And so that way you could find what they wrote it in.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they were all like academically trained, and that's what you do. When you make a good argument, you tell the other person's argument and you build a better argument against that.
Right.
You don't just say, this is what we believe. I mean, you have to be able to say what the other person said and back it up, and that is really what convinces people, you know, saying this is exactly what said, here's a better way of, here's what I have to say about it. And that's what our show is about, is
Right.
trying to get people to talk to people about that and build these kind of better ideas.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just always think it's a big red flag whenever someone says that their little revolutionary newspaper XYZ is Iskra, which is was one of probably the greatest revolutionary newspaper to ever hit the planet. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
I mean,
yeah, that's a pretty bold claim, you know.
It is pretty lofty. I mean, I don't know I know some of the writers are like, you know, educated and stuff, but
Right.
yeah, it doesn't. I mean, a lot of their writing doesn't show it. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't have to be. I'm not talking. You don't have to be necessarily like educated at university or something, but
it's not just that. It's like the politics itself.
Yeah.
Like we talked about Left Voice for long enough. Like, you know, over the years. Like, Left Voice. It is like, let's be frank. It's a Trotskyist trend.
Yeah.
It is not a newspaper that's open to the entire Marxist community, to all revolutionaries.
Yeah.
Right? It is not reach out a hand to all revolutionaries. Lenin reached out to pretty much every revolutionary. You know, even those that he disagreed with.
Yeah.
And sure, he was very critical of a lot of them, but he still reached out to a lot of them. And I wouldn't call Lenin a sectarian. But I consider Left Voice to be fairly sectarian. Mm-hmm. You know, it's and that's my big problem with Left Voice.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so like, let's say you have a problem with their article. There's no play, like we're in the 21st century and they don't want you to comment on it.
Yeah.
But the New York Times allows you to comment.
Yeah. I mean, lots. I mean,
right. So why is it that a bourgeois newspaper allows me to comment, but then a so-called revolutionary newspaper will not allow me to comment? Are they afraid of comments?
Yeah. I mean, at least, you know, I mean, you can still clear out the noise, but have have a discussion between serious, you know, revolutionaries that want to talk about these things.
Yeah. I mean, so I have some issues with this, and I don't feel like Left Voice seriously studies like the revolutionary community the way Iskra did.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it takes other groups, whether they, you know, that call themselves revolutionary, whether they're actually revolutionary or not. I don't think it takes those groups seriously and attempts to study them and engage with them. Iskra did. And so, yeah, so it's no Iskra. It's got a long ways to go. And it would have been nice if they at least said, like, if they at least recognized their shortcomings.
Yeah, at this point, they should have said that. Hey, we're no Iskra, but hey, maybe with some work and some help with the rest of the community, we could build something like Iskra.
Right.
That would motivate the hell out of me and stuff.
Yeah, instead of
maybe others to maybe, you know, take seriously about submitting some stuff for them. So anyways,
so let's talk about
Let's
Michael
go on.
Roberts real quick.
And I like Michael. I mean, I've been watching a ton of his videos. I really like them because I mean, he's easily accessible. Like I've watched.
Yeah,
I mean, he's funny and a lot of his videos too. And I think he does a good, for the most part, does a good job on explaining these concepts, these economic concepts. So
yeah.
this is a new series, but he's done a few of these lectures, uh, before on YouTube, but these are more updated ones.
Yeah,
So
so Michael Roberts is a professional economist.
yeah, used to work for the City of London. Was an economist for the City of London.
Right.
So now he mostly focuses on Marxian, promoting Marxian economics and lecturing and discussing them.
Yeah, and
So
I um I actually like the whole idea of this, and I think that the PowerPoint doesn't look too bad, and the presentation itself doesn't seem too bad. I have a big glaring criticism, and it's the sound quality, the audio quality.
yeah, I read that he needs to get a condenser microphone.
Yeah, I think his microphone is shit. Like it
Yeah,
sounds like it's through a webcam or something, and it's really garbled.
yeah,
And I don't say this to be insulting. I really want him to get a microphone because I think this is an interesting series.
yeah.
And it takes a lot of time. I know it takes a lot of time to do this kind of presentation, to prepare it, and then then you got to record it, and it's like you got bad takes or whatever. And he needs, like, I've told him he needs to get a microphone.
And I recommend these three because there's three of these basic introduction videos on Marx's laws,
Right.
and he does them, and everybody should watch them. Like because no matter how, like, up until I think it was like 1980 or something, I can't remember exactly the year. Marx was the most cited, in the academics, in the academics, but he's also the most misunderstood, and people don't understand really what he wrote in Capital.
Yeah,
And I
and a
think
lot of these groups, like these left voice, socialist resurgence groups, they're not. There's no videos like this that they put out, where they explain Marxist economics. It's like,
yeah, they're just like smash capitalism.
right, and you have to you have to seriously do your homework to learn about this. You have to look up
You
Michael
do. I mean, me
Roberts. You have
too.
to read Capital.
I tried reading Capital, but then I started with David Harvey, and then going back and reading passages and going over and over the lectures, and like
Right.
it's a lot. It is. It's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to understand. And there's no fucking reason why it took him 20 years to write the 3 volumes of this.
Right.
In totality.
So I mean, yeah, I appreciate that Michael Roberts is doing this. I think this is important, and I think this is actually revolutionary work. Is teaching
Yeah.
people how capitalism works,
Yeah.
and really works. And
I mean, because that's a total misconception that, like, actually, and then because it's a lot of it's taken from, it is absolutely based on classical economics,
right,
and it builds on it, and it ends where classical economics just glazes over things and say, well, this is what's going to happen to this and this and this, and Marx foresaw all of this happening, all of what's happening right now with finance capital taking over and stuff, and like it's just a testament to his foresight, like to both him and Engels' foresight into capitalism.
right.
Yeah, and so yeah, I can't recommend this and David Harvey's lectures on capital, enough to people as a starting point. If and if you're like me and have ADHD and get lost in the words, but now that I've taken the videos, I can follow along the book a lot better, and it's yeah, you just read it and you're like, wow, wow, he saw that and wow, explained it like that. And it's after that, it doesn't seem dry, and you start to get his sense of Marx's like kind of sense of humor.
Yeah. So if anybody knows Michael Roberts, or if Michael Roberts ever listens to this, tell him to get a mic, like a new mic. Put some pressure on him.
Yeah. Well, he said thank you for the advice. I will look into that.
Yeah, I hope he gets one because
yeah. But anybody else, yeah, go to his videos. He's got some great lectures. He did 3 lives in like in 20 and half an hour. He wanted to do this at this presentation. It's pretty funny. That's a good one. Look into his videos. Highly recommended if you want to understand Marxian economics, the basic foundations.
Yeah. So kind of last but not least, it's 12:41, so we've been on for about 40 minutes, so that's pretty good time actually. I was talking to Andrew earlier that we should go through this Hakim video, Revolution, a how-to guide. It's got some eyeballs, and we're gonna try to break it down and give our reaction, our thoughts, and so we'll just do that. And 1 second here.
Do you want to give a little introduction? Because
I don't know Hakim too well. I haven't watched a whole lot of his videos. I've watched a little bit.
Okay.
So I can't really speak too much on his politics. I've heard a little bit of stuff here and there. I know that there's kind of a little bit of traction with him with the tankies and the Luna Oi type fans. And that's kind of how that's how I came across this, which was, I think it was posted on BeardTube.
Okay.
So I was thinking we just give this a watch. I do want to say that Hakim does have fairly decent production, it sounds like he has a decent microphone, and he's able to write a script and do some editing of his videos, and I think that's helped to promote those videos. So in that regard, I don't think it'll be too cringy. Anyway, let's just roll it, and then we'll roll with this.
Hi there. In this video, I'll discuss how we can go about this whole revolution thing, mostly as a primer to new leftists, but it also might be useful for those that have been around for a while as well. This will be timestamped, so
and let me know if you want to pause it, Andrew.
Let's get started. 1. Why do we want revolution? This is a relatively simple question that can be answered with many volumes, but I'll keep it simple. Capitalism is an untenable and unstable system built on the inherent injustice of market allocation, as well as the destruction of the environment and commodification of everything around us. It hurts us, the planet, and pretty much just about anything else. A deeper introductory analysis of capitalism and its faults can be found in an earlier video I made here. Only through revolution, the overthrow of one class, the ruling class, by another class, the working class, can we finally escape the endless boom and bust cycles, the crises of overproduction, and the ruin of our common earth. The system that will overtake and supersede capitalism is socialism, in which the market is done away with, the means of production are democratically managed, and the state machinery, in the hands of the working class, is made to work for the working class and society as a whole. For a deeper introductory dive into socialism and its inherent...
Yeah, so I think this is an important thing to talk about too, because Michael Roberts mentioned it in his videos too. He talked about that Marx was talking about both the producers and the workers
right
being exploited. And I think this is a big misunderstanding too. And I think that people need to understand this, and especially why people need to read about capitalism. But it needs to be pointed out more that it's harmful to the producers eventually, because they have to act in a certain way too. But it's only, but they are, but they hold all the power, and it's only the working class that can end it. Because, I mean, but basically now, and you know, Roberts will get into it in another video, but I'll talk. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different video. But did you want to say anything before we continue
Yeah,
that?
so just opening up here, like let's try to identify the target audience for this video. It sounds like, which I think is important whenever you like review a video or essay, it's like, well, who are they talking to? And the target audience here seems to be people that don't really know a lot about Marxism or revolutionary ideas, or capitalism, right? Like this sounds like it's geared toward more novices, like political novices.
Yeah.
So he set that, and that's why I think that's why he's plugging in these other intro type videos. And yeah,
So do you think it's a good intro so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problems with it.
Okay, let's go. Keep rolling then.
Superiority over capitalism, take a look at this video I made here. Now that's all well and good, but how do we go about this whole revolution thing exactly? 2. The approach to revolution. As much as you and I would love to just flip a switch to achieve our goals, sadly the real world is different. Only tireless work towards revolution and the appropriate material conditions can result in a situation that could possibly lead to the overthrow of capitalism. What exactly does this tireless work look like, though? Simple. The building of organizations, education, direct action, mutual aid, applying the mass line, and ceaseless agitation, amongst other things. All of this will be touched on soon. Let's take this one by one. What's this about building organizations? 3. Building organizations and their importance. Human beings are a cooperative species. We rarely work alone, and anything worth doing requires collective efforts of the masses of people from their various walks of life. It goes without saying that anything you can do on your own can be done more quickly, efficiently, and cleanly.
I want to pause this for a sec.
Yeah.
Do you see this? The Bank of China. I'd like to know the history of the Bank of China, but
here it is. Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. That like I'm not. Do you know if I don't know if this is Hong Kong or not, if this is mainland China, but I do know that I just found a little bit of irony in that, because this is the third time I've watched this video, and I don't remember him discussing like the banks and their role in the imperialist system.
Which is huge. Well, that's kind of what I was kind of leading to, what Robertson, what Marx eventually talks in volume 3.
Right.
Is the big problem of why capital has to end, because it's going to end up like this, where financial capital is just, and there has to be more and more production, and so on and on and on and on. But yeah.
So let's just carry on here.
A dedicated organization, and politics is no different. Now,
I think the music's a little bit
distracting
too.
What are we talking about exactly? Well, that's up to the material conditions of your region and the requirements of your community. Having an appropriate materialist analysis is of prime importance. These organizations can be political parties, or women's groups, or student unions, or even standard workers' unions, amongst many other things. The point being, though, is that nothing can be accomplished without the proper organizations being in place. History has proven that organic mobilization, where people spontaneously mobilize, is at best easily fragmented and crushed, or at worst non-existent. Organizations exist to lay the groundwork for that crucial moment, or at least to nudge it along. Once it comes around, though, there is some ready-made infrastructure with an appropriate analysis, the people's trust, and a detailed plan of action at hand. Now, the boring organizational aspects of these groups too depend on the material conditions. At times, a highly centralized leadership is necessary. At others, a decentralized umbrella organization with numerous streams of leadership, but nonetheless a single goal. Leadership is fluid, sometimes centralized, sometimes running through multiple streams, depending on the material conditions. There isn't just one answer at all times. Under capitalism, the issues people face, from exploitation to the unjust distribution of resources according to profit rather than need, is painted as moral failings of individuals, rather than systemic defects that need to be, and definitely can be, corrected. In an organization, those that take part...
Okay, so I want to kind of like talk about this for the leadership thing that he said, because this came up in Hassan video, and this is a big misconception that people outside of Marxist community think, oh, there's just going to be like this totalitarian leadership and everybody makes one decision, and he was like, so the janitor's going to have as much say as, like, you know, the CEO. And no, it's just like, no, there is going to be, you know, different levels, but there'll be more democracy and more input from like the guy on the street level, like, you know, what kind of cleaners should be used.
You're talking about under communism.
Yeah, you know,
okay.
Just like, you know, so this revolutionary structure, I think, is important. You know, I think it's important to you know, to recognize that it isn't just, you know, I think this is good for people to understand.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, my take on that is, in our current society, the capitalist class decides leadership.
Yeah.
Right, and how leadership's going to work, and leadership is structured in a way that's going to benefit the capitalist class.
Yeah, exactly. So the janitor...
And in a working class, in the dictatorship of the working class, in the working class run society, they're going to be the class that's going to decide how leadership's going to work.
Yeah.
And in a classless society, there won't be a class that decides how leadership will work.
Yeah, I mean, they're, of course not, you know, let's say a janitor's not going to make a decision, you know, on how to build a building, but they're, you know, in this, you know, under classless, you'll still have different groups and different specializations, but it'll be
probably
more holistic than one person, than one like CEO of a company that maybe doesn't even have any experience building a building, but he's still the CEO of, you know, that construction or whatever, or something like that.
There might not be CEOs. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, everything, all of society is going to be organized completely differently. You know, like, I'm not sure if, I mean, the point is that, that it won't be organized by a class for that class, you know.
Yeah.
It'll be like, the idea is that it should be organized for the benefit of humanity, and what's, you know, in a way that's going to benefit everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't really say what that is. I mean, we have our own prejudices that we bring to the table.
Yeah.
From living in a capitalist society and stuff. But, you know, so I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but,
neither do I, but we also know right now we do have, you know, Marx both talked about it. We have reached the productive capacity where we can meet the basic, you know, the foundation for a socialist society easily. We have the, like, even taking, like, we have like the supply chain technology and everything in place for that kind of thing to happen right now. But yeah, I mean, nobody knows. We need a discussion. Nobody knows exactly, but we can have open discussions about how we could restructure it, you know. I mean, we both have some pretty good ideas, but, you know, I mean, lots of people have some pretty good ideas, but the foundations are there more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like there, I think that there will be a fundamental change in leadership, you know, and chain of command and hierarchy and that kind of thing. Like, I think there will be a change. Like, I don't know exactly what that change is going to be. You know, it's not up to me to change to figure that out. It's going to be up to humanity to figure that out. But the thing is, humanity is not going to be. The idea is that humanity shouldn't be enslaved to a class. You know, it shouldn't be one class shouldn't be able to decide how that's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Part, as well as those that directly benefit from the work these groups do, help people develop an appropriate and correct analysis of the situation and the undeniable failings of the capitalist system. In essence, organizations are the key to and school of liberation. To summarize, the point of organizations and their purpose is twofold. Firstly, to directly aid our communities, and in doing so, broadcast the...
Also, I don't know why Hakim felt it was necessary to say that that organizations are good and that they're necessary for a revolution, because to me, that's duh. Like, who's going to disagree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe I take it like this, because I can't remember, some of the articles say we just need to be out on the streets protesting, but some of those protests have been unorganized. I don't know, maybe that's what
it just seems like anybody with half a brain cell would know that you need an organization to achieve anything.
We're going to go after that.
The failures of the capitalist system, and secondly, to build a preliminary form of dual power and equip the people with the necessary tools so that, in that crucial moment, we can properly take advantage and win our liberation.
Okay, so now he's talking about dual power, and
I think that needs more of an explanation for
yeah, this is kind of a touchy, hot topic, even I think in the Marxist community.
Yeah.
Like, so let's listen to this here.
4. Education and its
I'm assuming he's
importance.
going to talk more about
Now,
dual
what of
power.
education? This doesn't mean only reading theory, although that is of paramount importance too. It also means organic education through organizing, be it understandings of legal frameworks, public relations, basic medical knowledge, and computer know-how. The reason theory is important is because it is a guide to action. It is what allows us to properly understand the world around us and how to go about critiquing and, more importantly, changing it. If you're a new Marxist and want some advice on what you should be doing education-wise, take a look at this video here. If you'd like to get a basic reading list on socialism, take a look at this video here. The point of educating yourself in the theory is to be able to develop your...
So just a little FYI, I did see some stuff on Mao, so I'm assuming that Hakim is a Maoist.
Okay.
criticisms of capitalism, and to confidently and accurately share your understanding with your community and those around you. This, combined with direct action, is what builds class consciousness, the very first block towards abolishing capitalism. With that said, what about the other sort of education? Theory can be done on your own, or in groups, which is highly recommended, but interpersonal communication skills, how to handle conflict, basic cooperative and democratic participation, accurately finding a solution to a problem found through said cooperative effort, all this is something that can only really be done in groups. Finally, professional organizations tend to grow the, let's say, more boring but still very necessary stuff as well. From administrative skills and technical organization of transport groups, etc., to things like video editing and Photoshop skills or creative writing in the forms of pamphlets or seminars and more. 5. Mutual aid and basic organizing. With all the introductory stuff out of the way, let's get more concrete. Firstly, what is mutual aid? Mutual aid is collective coordination to meet each other's needs. We fundamentally understand that the systems we have in place are not going to meet those needs, and the aim of mutual aid projects is to develop this point. It's to set up alternative sources of that which your community is in need of, be it medical attention or housing or whatever else, accompanied by constant education, explaining why is it that their needs aren't being met in the first place. The best example that comes to mind, at least for the United States and other Western countries, is that of the Black Panthers. A dedicated Marxist group, they saw the direct injustices being dealt to their own African American communities, educated themselves with the relevant theory, and got to work developing a free children's breakfast program, community protection, free medical clinics and ambulance rides, aid to the elderly and infirm when they run errands, educational initiatives, and much more. Notice, they not only provided what their communities needed and weren't being provided in the first place, but also were delivering a clear and scathing criticism of the capitalist system and systemic racism in the US. To use an old Sufi adage, they not only fed the stomach, but the mind too. This process of educating those who benefited from the mutual aid projects of the Black Panthers instilled in those communities a drive for change, which is what made the Black Panthers so successful in the eyes of the working class, and so dangerous in the eyes of the ruling class. On a side note, the police, being the radiantly positive organization that it is, broke into the church storing the food for the Black Panther free breakfast program and destroyed it, mostly by urinating and stepping on it, just in case you ever doubted whose side they're on. We need to make something abundantly clear. Mutual aid is not charity. In times of crisis, the ruling class pushes very safe, sanitized, and fairly ineffective organizations revolving around charity, in which the decisions on what is needed, how much, where, and to whom are completely disconnected from the people who are most affected by them. These institutions aren't intended to get at the root cause of whatever the issue is, be it poverty or homelessness or drug abuse or whatever else. Instead, it's designed as a pretty PR game for the rich and influential to beautify themselves and their ever so generous philanthropy, without ever even attempting to correct the issue at hand.
Yeah.
So it's not just a PR game, because one of these papers I wrote about like, the food system in Africa, like a lot of these so-called aid packages, farm aid packages from the US and such, they do it on when they hoard the food when the supply, when the demand is high, but when there is not much demand, they dump it into, they use Africa as dumping grounds for their food. So it's kind of cyclical, but it also takes away from the community's own, Africa's own ability to produce, because they're already, entrenched in this like banana republic system sort of thing. So it's not just PR, it's a whole fucked up system. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous how our food system, really works. There's no chance for Africa to develop out of, to develop at all beyond this simple banana republic, given this system. But yeah, anyways, you want to say anything from this point?
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that this is what he means, like when he's talking about dual power.
Yeah.
He's talking about these, having mutual aid organizations or mutual aid projects. Like he brings up like food banks, for example. I tend to think like this could be important.
Food banks, I very different from what they are right now, because whenever I go to the store, I go to Safeway, fucking every time they ask me if I want to buy, like, donate $5 to the food bank and shit.
I've been to a number of food banks, like,
I do that too, yeah. And
right.
I mean, but yeah,
over the years,
it's ridiculous, because that the whole supermarket system and the whole chain is, I mean, the whole reason we need them is because of this system, and then them asking for it. I mean, I still donate to it, but I mean, I had my mom said she actually goes, and her friends go to the dollar store because it's cheaper than because we've had friends that work at Safeway, go to dollar store, buy it cheaper there, and then donate it, rather than buying it from places like Safeway and stuff.
I don't want to debate how the grocery store system works, yeah. Andrew, but the thing is, it's like, okay, so like when we're talking about these mutual aid projects and stuff, like I think it depends on the circumstances.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to be useful or not. you know, and useful for a revolutionary project, you know, and for building a revolutionary organization. And it depends on the circumstances.
Yeah.
You know, and so like I as I
But
understand it, there's
my only point was the food bank is the current iteration of it up here is equal to like food aid to the developing countries. Is all I'm saying. So
I mean, I've seen some food banks that are better than others for sure.
yeah,
Like, you know, like and generally speaking, it's the food banks that are in the more rural areas where there's like more farmers and stuff. They
Yeah.
tend to be better
yeah.
because it's basically farmers getting rid of like surplus produce and meat and that kind of thing. It's pretty good. It's actually
That's
like,
good. Yeah,
you know, like you can get fresh produce and that kind of thing at the food bank. It's not too bad. It's usually in the cities that it's like worse in my opinion. But
Yeah.
like because a lot of the stuff in the cities I think is grocery store surplus, or you know, old vegetables and, you know, old bread, that kind of thing. That's basically past their expiration date. And so and then they donate it to the food bank and then they write it off on their taxes. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I mean it's getting better. So I mean a lot of it's still thrown out too. That could be going to food banks too. But
Yeah, but like
anyways.
but anyways, like back to this mutual aid thing. I think that there's a fetishization of mutual aid projects in the left in general.
Yeah.
It's you know, like, you know, for as long as I've been political, there's been these mutual aid discussions. Food not bombs is probably the biggest one I can think of.
Yeah.
Like but just because you have a mutual aid project, you know, it's not like that's not like the secret ingredient to building a revolutionary organization by any means.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of feel like Hakim is actually promoting illusions in this. And I've heard all these arguments before 1,000 times. I'm not against like mutual aid or, you know, starting a food not bombs program. I mean, I think that they do good work. You know, it's good to feed the homeless, but you know, I don't have any illusions that like just because you're doing that you're building some kind of alternative to the government.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe he goes further onto this, but you know, let's hear.
Symptomatic treatment, not a cure, and it's intended to make humane a system that is inherently inhumane. Side note, the question of security is very important, but sadly can't be discussed at the present time. Some quick points are community defense, community patrolling, basic security knowledge, both armed and unarmed methods of self-defense, first aid, and legal knowledge. You should keep all this in mind, and the internet is your best friend. 6. The pitfalls of organizing. This topic deserves a video of its own, really, but there's no harm in briefly touching on it here. One of the main pitfalls is lifestyleism. Capitalism commodifies everything, and in today's world, even being woke, a performative demonstration of how in tune you are with an understanding of systemic bias against race, or sex, or class, or gender, exists as something right next to your favorite type of music. The liberation of us, the vast majority of humanity, isn't something to add onto a Twitter bio and that's that. The necessary serious follow-up on those convictions is required, otherwise it's a stale and impotent opinion that dies as soon as it's invoked. Another common pitfall is one of a lack of focus, rigid unquestionable hierarchies, and secrecy within the organization. In some cases, the material conditions of the moment demand secrecy.
what's that?
Which we talked about, the secrecy and hierarchy within an organization.
Yeah.
Not transparent. So it's good he's bring that up.
Yeah, I'm glad he brings that up because I've noticed particularly with Maoists there's an obsession with and also anarchists there's an obsession with secrecy and keeping things secret, and actually, you know, to be honest, even the Trotskyists as well, like it's kind of prevalent in the left, like that there's an obsession with with secrecy. I mean, a lot of this has to do with things like COINTELPRO and the history of the FBI and that kind of thing. but the, you know, it's like, and then there's like, but I mean, part of it is also, it's like, look, I mean, the thing is, I can understand like why, say, like the National Liberation Front in Vietnam was very secretive, because it was illegal, and they'd kill you or they'd throw you in jail if they found out that you were in the NLF, right? Like that makes sense. Or the Bolsheviks, they throw you in jail if you were a Bolshevik, like, and the United States and Canada as well, we have a lot of political freedoms that the Vietnamese didn't have, that the Russians in Tsarist Russia didn't have, the Chinese didn't have, and it's my opinion we should take full advantage of that.
Yeah, indeed.
Important addresses or the starting point of some revolutionary action of some kind are relevant examples. In direct community organizing in a non-revolutionary moment, though, is not only counterproductive but also harmful. Decision-making should be inclusive, clear, sympathetic, and open to suggestion or influence from the relevant community you're working in. There shouldn't be any central group or clique that's undemocratically chosen, which decides how everything works and will be organized. Not only does this set this one group out for burnout, but also directly harms our aims by dividing the organization into an us and them, tearing the core and essentially factionalizing or otherwise dissolving the organization in the process. A related point is paternalism, elitism, overpromising, and under-delivering. These organizations are educational institutions for those activists that take part, and the people are the professors. You're not graciously descending from the heavens to help them. You're building a mutually beneficial and cooperative movement aimed at growing the impetus for the abolishment of capitalism. The overpromising and under-delivering part is self-explanatory, and why proper accounting with checks and balances being in place are of paramount importance. Transparency with group finances, democratic participation and how best these funds should be used, with clear communication along all lines can prevent potentially disastrous outcomes. Equally, the opposite is also an issue. Being too tight-fisted with funds or resources and having a scarcity mindset, be it in money or time or labor or whatever else, can inhibit the positive influence of the organization, cultivating a cold and very pragmatic approach that distances us from the community that we're trying to reach in the first place. This is why I highlighted those more boring aspects earlier, such as legal knowledge and administrative practice. Many of these common issues can be corrected through solid accounting and transparency. This is only a small section, and there are many more we can talk about, but we can move on to the next point for now. 7. The co-option of progressive movements. The ruling class cares very little for the daily suffering of those underneath them, normally. I say normally because this balances...
Okay, so I just want to pause it for a sec, because he was on this topic of transparency and cliques, or undemocratic cliques, I guess, or undemocratic leadership. I think the issue of transparency, I think, is important, and it's important to be as transparent as possible with a lot of the work that's done. I mean, obviously, technically, it's probably impossible to be transparent with everything, but it's important to be as politically transparent as possible. And it's good that he mentions that. He fails to mention that in recent years, a lot of groups haven't been very transparent. And so there's been a lot of there's been sexual assault cases that have been basically covered up by groups like the ISO, like we've covered, and other groups, and this has been an ongoing discussion, right? I think in the left, and then there's also been this idea of cliques of a mothership branch or kind of core controlling an organization. And then we've also talked, in the past, I know we've talked about examples like that. But that said, I do think that I mean, not undemocratic, but I do think that there's a need for leadership, and not everything is going to be this kind of horizontal communal organization style as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, for one, it just wouldn't be, I don't think it, we'll see. I mean, whatever organization style happens, whether it's all flat and communal, or whether there's some kind of hierarchy, I do think there needs to be a degree of transparency, but whatever style happens, it needs to be in the interest of serving the proletariat and advancing the organization of the proletariat so it can overthrow capital. And that's the principle behind it. And like, I don't fetishize either or, really. And I think it's important not to fetishize either or.
Yeah.
Because circumstances may change. One may be good for now, and then another may be good later.
Yeah.
Disrupted when a crisis occurs. Systems break down and are either out completely or in the process of being put back together. This exacerbates the daily inequalities and pulls the curtain back, so to speak. It is our job to expose these injustices and couple them with an appropriate analysis so that the temporary flare of people's anger and sense to contribute isn't lost after things calm down again. The ruling class hates crises not only because they expose setting inequalities, but also because they disrupt the status quo of surplus extraction and profit-making, causing them to push the capitalist state to smooth all of this out as soon as possible so that normal can return. Most of all, it shows that the things you want and fight for, things like public transport or healthcare, rent freezes or reductions, freezes on loan payments, with student loans being the most famous example that comes to mind, and much more, are definitely possible. Before the crisis, they tell you they're not. During the crisis, all of a sudden the government rolls out temporary forms of the very things they told you were impossible. The current pandemic is an excellent example of this, with eviction moratoriums, increased unemployment benefits and income support, free public transit, suspensions of student loan payments, and more. This is in no way all-encompassing or even adequate, but it shows that it is possible given the right sort of impulse. Mutual aid, direct organizing, and a proper political program can build that impulse. Keep in mind though, successful growing movements face two responses from the powers that be. Either they are mercilessly harassed until they are crushed, like the Black Panthers were, or the government and corporations and the media catches on and tries to extend a friendly gesture, let's call it. They try to bring them into a sanitized fold, framing them as heroic volunteers helping impoverished communities, and slowly, bit by bit, making them part of the system, in tandem with charities and ineffective and defunded government programs and corporate initiatives. Eventually, these politicians and philanthropists begin associating and even attempting to direct such groups, with results that you may expect. Remember, the reason these organizations exist is to show the failures of capitalism, to advocate for the abolishing of capitalism, and to build dual power in preparation of such an event. The aid that is extended in cooperation with various communities is to show that not only is a new world possible, but also why we want a new world, how we can achieve it, and how we can do it on our own terms as a class. We should never lose sight of our fundamental end goal. In times of crisis, we win concessions, but these are only as strong and lasting as the mobilizations that made them necessary. The only true change that can be maintained is by revolution. For a deeper dive into the pitfalls of solely reformism, check out this video I made here. 8. Concrete steps. What can we do immediately? This may sound a little silly, but talk. Talk to your family, your friends, your coworkers. Work within your community and bring together like-minded people. Join existing organizations if they're around, aid in currently existing mutual aid groups, and try to get involved in the organizing activity. Try to bring forth a simple to understand yet sharp criticism of capitalism. This is where the importance of educating yourself shines. You don't even need to mention socialism at first. It's enough to sow the seeds of doubt, and to subsequently follow up when your community or those around you are more ready. Always relate your criticism of capitalism to people's direct issues. Lack of employment and healthcare, infrastructure, or even very specific material issues people face. Always properly analyze them and turn them into a quick, concise, and appreciated bit of knowledge to share about the failings of the current government and the capitalist system. The most fundamental point is to always be kind, patient, sympathetic, and non-combative. It doesn't matter how good your arguments sound or how much your organization has helped. If people feel you're arrogant, stubborn, inattentive, or just plain rude, a smile, a brisk, empathetic discussion, and an appreciation of others' perspectives, even if they're wrong, goes much farther than the debate bro facts and logic approach. Be kind, patient, and discuss with empathy. That's how we get people on our side. If you do your job right and convey the message appropriately, there's no way they'll reject you, as the things we want are directly in their and our interests. Now, suppose you have a bunch of people together. You're motivated, dedicated, educated, and ready to help. What's the next step? Your best bet is to start small. After your attempts at forming a basic political program, you'll need...
Okay, yeah, so I'm glad he says that this idea of agitation, is good. And I mean, first of all, that's what really, I liked about like the Zeitgeist movement, the videos about like, it was very approachable on dissecting, like, it was good for that, about showing some of the problems of capitalism. But then now this other idea of agitation, because I like what he says about explaining the problems of capitalism. The tankies, which make up a large part, their idea of agitation is trying to paint old history like new, making like heroes out of like,
Right.
out of Stalin or Mao, or not being critical of them all and saying there's all ways and stuff. So I think it's good that that's where the agitation should be at, rather than what's overwhelmingly happening in the so-called Marxist community right now, which is like revisionist history.
Yeah. I think it's important to be approachable. I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, and I mean it does, and like I said, it needs to start. I think people, and that's why I like what Michael Roberts and a step higher up, um, what's his name, David Harvey, who's been doing it for like close to 4 decades on capital. I mean, that's an important start, is to understand that and being able to explain. That's how the agitation starts. We can't just say, well, because people will say, well, capitalism, we have the things because of capitalism, and people people who don't understand what Marx is actually saying can't say, well, Marx never said any of this, that capitalism wasn't dynamic. It just said that it would eventually lead to all these other things, and that we would need to transform away from that. And I think that's an important discussion to have for people. If you're going to have agitation, is properly understand what Marx foresaw, said in Capital, and said what was going to happen, and what many people can see happening right now, but they can't tie that into Marx, and they don't understand this is what Marx actually said. So I think that's an important part of agitation. There is all of that, and I'm glad that's where he says agitation should be at.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about these like interpersonal skills and stuff, I mean, it's good to have these interpersonal skills. I mean, I kind of think his explanation of like why they're necessary, it sounds a bit like cultish. Like,
yeah,
and then the other thing is, I think he fails to address how a lot of groups, a lot of people in these in current present day organizations don't have these kind of interpersonal skills with each other.
Yeah, I think that's important for each other, but not necessarily for agitation against people outside of the community. I think overall it's good.
Like within the community,
some people are drawn. Like me, I was drawn to people who really know their shit.
Right.
Like really, really knew their shit, and I didn't care how they came across,
Right.
because I liked that. I respected that. You know, there's some people that
But
are
I mean,
just
it's
too nice.
it's important to, to be able to communicate with people outside of the community, outside of
Yeah.
those revolutionary circles, and then also within those revolutionary circles. And he fails to explain that there's serious communication problems within those more revolutionary circles. It's like, okay, so like recent example, I had I made a recent criticism of Trotskyists, right? For how they basically, many of them, told their members and told other people to join the Democratic Socialists of America, and they joined in droves. And now, from a lot of the same people that told everyone to join the DSA, we're seeing criticism of the DSA for its marriage to the Democrats, which they knew about 3 years ago. That's not new. And so some Trotskyists got offended by that, who follow me, and they basically said that those groups that told people to join the DSA were not real Trotskyists. And it's like, so it was basically the no true Scotsman argument.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, there's
That's
so
not good communication.
That's not good communication. Yeah, that's for one. Not only not very good with me, but but it's also, it's like it's not very good communication with those other Trotskyists, because they had the opportunity to tell them the DSA was a sham 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Everybody had that opportunity. I know I had it. Like I used that opportunity. Like 3 years ago, I was saying that there needed to be a national Marxist conference in the United States.
Yeah.
Which I still think there needs to that needs to happen. Now, and that was my alternative to that. So anyway, I mean, and then what's a conference? A conference is a place where you all talk to each other.
Yeah.
And one of the major criticisms of that was, one, different groups in the Marxist community will never get along enough, and they don't have anything, they don't have enough in common to talk to each other about anything. And then the other one was, well, what are we going to talk about? It's like
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating, because the amount that we actually do have in common, but we're bickering over history that that's
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous, really.
Okay, so let's move on. We're a little over halfway here.
All right.
You need to find out what exactly is needed by your community. How exactly do you find this out, though? 9. Democratic centralism and the mass line. The correct questions need to be asked. How are correct ideas reached? How do we know we are actually meeting the needs of our communities? What steps should be taken to reach a correct analysis and a solid political program? All of these questions are answered by the Chinese revolutionary experience and their application of the mass line. What is the mass line, though? Let's quote Mao and see what he has to say.
All correct
So
leadership
this is Maoist ideas here. Just FYI, the mass line.
Yeah.
is necessarily from the masses to the masses. This means take the ideas of the masses, scattered and unsystematic ideas, and concentrate them. Through study, turn them into concentrated and systematic ideas. Then go to the masses and propagate and explain these ideas until the masses embrace them as their own, hold fast to them, and translate them into action, and test the correctness of these ideas in such action. Then, once again, concentrate ideas from the masses, and once again go to the masses so that the ideas are persevered in and carried through. And so on, over and over again in an endless spiral, with the ideas becoming more correct, more vital, and richer each time. Such is the Marxist theory of knowledge.
Okay, so I had something written, like pre-written before on that. And so I'll just summarize, and I'll just pull the quote back a little bit in case anybody missed it. Masses make ideas. This is what's being said, my interpretation. Leaders aggregate ideas. Leaders promote ideas. Rinse and repeat with trial and error. And that's basically what he's saying. Masses make ideas. Leaders aggregate those ideas. Leaders promote those ideas. And then rinse and repeat. Now, to me, I have issues with that.
Yeah, it seems a little too cookie cutter.
Yeah, and like, yeah, like what ideas are we talking about? Of course, is one of the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as aggregating those ideas, it's like, well, how, what system is being used to aggregate those ideas? And just because, and the ideas that are coming from the masses, right? Like, and then the leaders are aggregating those ideas. Okay, so what about the ideas that aren't coming from the masses that need to be taken into consideration? Right? So it's like, so I have problems with this whole mass line theory. I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be aggregation of ideas. I mean, there's always aggregation of ideas, but this formula to me has problems.
Yeah.
It's more vital and richer each time. Such is the Marxist theory of knowledge.
This is the kernel of correct political approach. Discuss, identify the scattered and unclear grievances of the community you're attempting to reach, formulate and concentrate those ideas and bring them back to that community. Through a constant cycle of collaborative corrections and modifications, the correct conclusions and phases of action can be reached. Where does democratic centralism fall into all of this? What is it, exactly? Well, it's the Leninist idea of diversity in discussion and unity in action. You can have a vibrant democratic atmosphere once proposals are being put forward and discussed, but once a democratic consensus is reached on a decision, everyone, including those that don't necessarily agree with said democratic consensus, should abide by and follow through with the decision of the majority. In this way, we can ensure that our efforts are targeted, full-bodied, and successful. Otherwise, we leave room for fragmentation, factionalism, and a castration of the main push of the organization. We need to ensure that the limited resources that we do have, be it labor or money or whatever else, aren't needlessly wasted because of weak and scattered pushes in all directions. Now, of course, this isn't the correct approach in absolutely 100% of cases, and I again refer you to a proper analysis of your material conditions. 10.
Okay, so he's mentioning democratic centralism. I know we've read a lot of articles and ideas on democratic centralism and how it's used and often misused within the Marxist community, and how, like, basically, like, the different contexts in which it was used, like with the Bolsheviks and with present day organizations, like, and so I mean, I try to, for the most part, steer clear of that phrase, democratic centralism. I think centralism is important and discipline is important, and it's important to have democratic communication and transparency. You know, and so I think it's important to be able to have enough transparency to hold leadership accountable, but it's also important to have discipline, uh, and it's important to have central organization, at least for the United States and Canada in 2021.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so these are things that I do advocate for, but I understand that the phrase democratic centralism sometimes means that and sometimes doesn't. And basically, and it's an often misused term.
Yeah. I mean, I've misunderstood it when I was reading, you know, a lot of the articles at first. I was like, what the fuck does this mean?
Right.
Everybody's saying something different.
And it's often used, like I know you mentioned undemocratic cliques earlier, but it's often used as a term to justify those undemocratic cliques and to strengthen their positions.
Yeah.
Because you have a clique that's running the organization or a, you know, central committee or whatever, and then they vote on it. So therefore it must be democratic, and you do it. And therefore they have democratic centralism. I don't think that's really what it means, but that's often what they say it means.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, we voted on it and we told you to jump and you need to say how high.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's different from what I'm talking about. Where like we need to, you know, okay, so like let's say there's a central committee, they vote on something, they say it needs to be done. The rest of us need to be able to, you know, have a say and know what's going on and have, you know, be able to have accountability.
Yeah.
And yeah, there needs to be discipline.
Yeah.
But
and that idea and technology is more easy, makes this kind of our ideas even more, you know, easier to implement now with technology. You
right.
know, we don't have to have like, you know, these big hall meetings and everybody, you know, we have, you know, you have a website, you have like basic ideas and it's, you know, members can vote on it instantly or, you know, these ideas instantly like that, you know, it's not, you know, it's not complicated.
The role of the individual. It's always good to remember that different people have different capacities. Some can be background figures, while others foreground. Some are comfortable and enjoy speaking publicly, others like to be more reserved. Socialism is an inclusive movement, and not everyone needs to be in the thick of it, organizing strikes and battling it out with the repressive forces of the state or whatever. If you're the type that dislikes large gatherings or gets anxious with burdens of administration or logistical work, that's equally fine. Whatever you can contribute, be it writing or art or even simple packaging work, for example in grocery drives, is appreciated and directly contributes to the movement. With that said, I think everyone should try their hand in administrative work. It's a lot easier than it sounds, I promise you. One entry point that I think most could find easy to do, find personally fulfilling, and not too burdensome is gardening. In particular, community gardens for growing food. There are endless videos and books on the topic, and meeting at least part of your community's grocery needs for free is one of the quickest ways to winning their trust and getting them involved as well. This, combined with community volunteers and political education, is one of many seeds, pardon the pun, that can germinate into larger organizations. This just so happens to be a fairly tame and cheap introductory point, and that's intentional. With more volunteers, basic daycare facilities to working parents can be provided. Having the assistance of some nurses and doctors that are willing to donate their time, even basic forms of healthcare could be provided, too. With sufficient growth, you can even expand to developing collective housing units. I'm not saying luxury condos, but something small you can provide to the homeless in your area. I'm not sure about you, but where I'm from, concrete, beams, and piping material is very cheap. If that's not possible, then take a look at whatever cheap rundown or abandoned structure in your area you can get a hold of, refurbish it, and turn it into housing. Hold on, why the sudden jump to rudimentary housing, you ask? Well, the question of the lumpen proletariat cannot be ignored. In the US, the homeless are the largest subsection of America's lumpen proletariat. For example, unemployed and stripped of their humanity, under capitalism they're just cast aside to rot, essentially. In an equal and democratically arranged society, these people have so much to contribute and are willing to. Knowing this, they can be one of the greatest sources of revolutionary commitment when the time comes. These community gardens, basic housing blocks, organizational tasks, etc. are all avenues for reincorporating them into your community. Not only would working with them restore their dignity, but would also give a form of productive employment to people who are more than willing to contribute.
Okay. Like I'm not against community gardens, but we have community gardens here, like a lot of them.
Yes.
And we have a terrible, like huge homeless problem of like, you know,
Yeah.
like it's not helping the homeless. Like let's be real.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to community garden your way out of homelessness.
No, we have community gardens here, and we have orchards left, right, and center here.
Right.
And we have a pretty high homeless population for the size of our city.
So I just think that Hakim is promoting illusions
Yeah.
in this, in mutual aid, and just like you know, like, and I think that these are kind of like widespread leftist illusions.
Yeah.
You know, that like basically, hey, we can community garden our way into socialism.
Yeah. I
and-
mean, yeah. Because really, like, I mean, community gardens, they don't produce that much food either.
Yeah. Or that we can community garden our way into a revolutionary organization. And yeah, like, yeah, and I think that's a big problem I have with this video, is that it kind of sounds like that to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it's good, but I don't think it's like maybe not included in the revolutionary video here. So yeah,
All right.
maybe you can make a separate video on that.
Yeah, because this is supposed to be how to have a revolution.
Yeah.
Contribute if given the chance. This isn't pity or self-serving charity. This is a recognition of our condition in theirs. All of this begins with a conversation and a few seeds in some pots. The only thing you need is action. 11. Tasks of the Western left. A lot of what I've said here has been of universal applicability, but here's one point I'd like to extend to the Western and specifically American left. It should go without saying that the number one global threat to leftist movements worldwide is the American imperial machine. Be it through sanctions, diplomatic and material support of reactionary forces, or outright invasion, the US has killed more revolutionary movements in their cradle than any other country. This means that, as American and other NATO ally nation leftists, a sacred duty falls on your shoulders. To put it concretely, resisting American imperialism internally by preventing the US government from exercising its imperial ambitions abroad and directly supporting those movements abroad will open up possibilities not before known to the American left. This is all well and good, but how do we do this? Simple. You form anti-war organizations, and you turn all existing mutual aid or other organizations into anti-war organizations as well. You can still do all your regular work, but you can associate and broaden your criticism by involving anti-imperialism as well. The vast majority of the American and other NATO ally nation working classes do not benefit from these wars. In fact, just the opposite. Resisting American oppression abroad is resisting American oppression within. When it comes to educating your fellow countrymen on this, you have to remember that many may have the perspective of liberals, a worldview that is thoroughly centered on the "a few bad apples" analysis. They seem to be unable of grasping that some institutions are simply made to perpetuate and reproduce what we'd want to morally condemn, be it police violence or military atrocities or economic practices under capitalism. Not because they're evil, but because it serves certain class interests and maintains the status quo, or raises profits. Moralism plays no part here. That doesn't mean appealing to the liberals' moral sense is useless, though. In my opinion, it's a great first step. Towards that point, I can recommend two works, Killing Hope by William Blum and The Triumph of Evil by Austin Murphy. Read these two works, discuss them with your communities, and share that knowledge. Work towards change.
What was that?
Have you read either of those?
I have not, no.
No. I do think he needs to be a little careful on his, I do agree about what he's saying about American imperialism, but I also think he needs to emphasize that a lot of countries have been hiding their crimes, and just like Canada this weekend, the 215 children found in the mass burial site, that the Canada's all this nice, and but they sell armory to Israel, and they've supported countless like overseas wars, our mining companies. I mean, it just we need to end the illusion too of all these other countries that are complicit. American capitalism is only that way because it's the strongest capitalist system in the world.
Right. I mean, I think that this is a bit of that he's presented a campist worldview.
Yeah.
And like a very campist worldview that the United States is imperialist and needs to be opposed at all costs. And it's like, and the problem with that is you ignore the fact that imperialism is a worldwide system.
Yeah.
It's a global system. And you're basically viewing imperialism as a political policy, which is why he said, hey, to oppose it, we need anti-war organizations.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens if it's not a war that's happening? What happens if they're putting the countries in debt, like the IMF World Bank, or that the way China's been doing into Africa, putting African nations in debt, building infrastructure on loans?
Yeah.
Right? That's imperialism too. It's not a war. You don't need an anti-war organization for that.
Yeah.
An anti-war organization does nothing for that.
Yeah, because I mean, people don't make those connections. They put countries in debt. Well, how are they going to pay for it? Well, the people of the country. And how does that help them?
You don't need a war to conquer a company or a country. You can conquer it just through debt alone.
Yeah.
And so I think that the way he presents imperialism is flawed.
Yeah.
Changing the perception of the U.S. military and U.S. foreign policy and U.S. action worldwide. I get that must be very difficult in such a highly militarized country, but your work now, if successful, will save countless lives down the road. Related actions can be educating yourself and others on movements abroad, raising money and materiel for them, whatever they require or advertise through their above-ground organizations, like in, for example, the Philippines, protesting U.S. actions against them, and even sabotage if the movement within your country is mature enough. The Black Panthers directly supported countless movements abroad, and in turn got support as well. Conclusion. This may have been an unnecessarily long video, but I hope it helps give at least a general picture of our approach. This isn't a step-by-step guide to revolution, but more of a primer to the very first blocks you can put in place. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon.
All right, so he's just promoting his Patreon. So I thought the video was kind of clumsy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, I think it's better than, some material out there. There are,
we've looked at some pretty bad stuff in the past.
Yeah. But, I think it's kind of a step in the right direction.
It's interesting. I think as far as how to revolution, how to guide, it doesn't say much.
No, yeah.
Like it really doesn't say much at all.
I mean, that is a problem on that. But I think it's a step in the direction in these kind of videos. But
right. I mean,
but yeah, there are definitely some issues lacking here.
Like
but,
Mao's,
some of them.
like Mao's mass line, I think was overrated. I hate to say it. I think it's overrated. Like that wasn't. I'm not. I don't. I mean, I understand. I think that Mao actually did contribute a lot to to how to make a revolution. At least in some circumstances. Obviously, he contributed a lot to China, right? Like, I mean, I don't ignore that, but the mass line part was okay. So what? Like, that doesn't. You take ideas from the masses and then you filter it, and then you tell us what the best ideas from the masses are, and then you rinse and repeat. And to me, that is like that's not like a big revelation to me or anything. And and then shouting out democratic socialism, democratic centralism, like that's just phrase mongering.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, yeah, I know he gave like a very basic kind of cookie cutter definition of it, but he doesn't explain how it's constantly being misused, and what the significance is. The only reason he's repeating it is because, hey, it's been used by Lenin and the Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
And the thing about, like, okay, organizations are good. You probably need an organization to have a revolution. Like, okay. You're probably going to have to interact with the community, I mean, but like, as far as like, you're going to do it through, you're going to build a revolution by gardening or communal gardening is going to win over the masses. Probably not.
No, I think it is. I mean, it is. He does say it is an introduction, and I mean, I think it is. Some of these things are good to hear for people just getting into this kind of
Right.
revolutionary thought. So it's definitely not more advanced, but I think it does have its place.
And the other thing is, he talks about joining different organizations. There's a lot of pitfalls with joining the present day organizations, as you know, because we go over this every week.
He shouldn't have just said that too.
Like, I won't recommend a single organization in the Marxist community to join.
He should have maybe worded that a little differently. Have a look and see the broad, ideas in these groups or whatever and such. But yeah, I mean that was a bit of a pitfall there.
And then the other thing is, so like my biggest criticisms is it sounds like he's not addressing the present day situation very well. At least in the United States and Canada. I'm assuming that Hakim is in the United States. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Or Canada. And I mean, I'm assuming that. Or Europe, I guess. He could be from Europe, but which would have kind of a similar situation. But it sounds like he's not really addressing the concrete boots on the ground situation today. Like the reality. And the state of like the revolutionary movement as it is today, and how to move forward from that, because that's, as far as like a revolution. I mean, a revolution is it's as far as building it, it's kind of like, to me, it's not a very predictable kind of thing. It's right. Like, we can have a revolutionary organization. It doesn't mean we're going to have a revolution. Like the masses themselves have to reach a critical level of consciousness and
of knowledge of what's wrong and why we need to change.
Right. And along with a critical level of stress, basically.
Yeah.
And that stress and that consciousness is what's going to start the gears for an actual revolution. And it's one thing he doesn't mention is, and this is what Marx and Engels and Lenin all agreed on, is that it's inevitable. It's going to happen regardless.
It is going to happen, whether
you like it or not.
Organization in place to transform to this kind of society we need, or we fall into disarray.
Right.
I mean, yeah, but it is going to happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not it's not it's not a pretty thing, and it's not going to be pretty, you know.
No, and that's exactly.
It's not going to be all community gardens.
That's what Michael Roberts is kind of discusses in like what he's detailing right now is what the late stages of imperialist capitalism that Lenin and Marx and Engels predicted. He's showing is this is what's happening.
Right.
And it's going to massively overtake industrial capital, and that's going to hurt the workers, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and more debt's going to be piled on more debt. I mean, it is inevitable, but people can't understand that. Well, how do you get out of debt with more debt?
Yeah.
You don't. There are crashes, cyclical crashes and resets, and they get bigger and bigger and more often, and that's what's happening right now.
So, hey, Andrew, I was thinking we could probably push the Hassan Abi stuff to next week. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, I mean, we're at 2 hours
right
now, so we'll talk about them next week. But yeah.
And so we're gonna talk about Hassan Abi today, but yeah, so we'll push that in next week. We'll talk about him next week. And I mean, I think that there's a lot to unpack with how a revolution is going to happen. I mean, I see an organization as like the revolution part is inevitable, and the job of the revolutionary organization is to lead the proletariat to victory, right? To make sure that it's going to win in the end. So it's and to defeat the counter revolution, and to minimize the damage as much as possible. Basically, to the damage, the suffering, and the misery that's inevitable, that's going to happen, and because and to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like, because we really, like, we're not sadists. We don't want suffering and misery.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to prepare for that. Like, it's you know.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like yeah, I felt like the video is flawed, and it's easy to get caught up with the clever editing. I mean, it's obviously has a script. It's obviously well planned. Like, the video is well planned. It's somewhat well thought out, you know, as far as having a script. But yeah, I actually wasn't too impressed with it.
Yeah. I think more for videos, like, I think for a starting point for people are video wise are Michael Roberts, and then what's his name? The other guy that does
David Harvey, is that what you're thinking?
David Harvey. First of all, primers, understand that, and then lead into these kind of and build these kind of videos. I think.
Well, I think Hakim actually bit off way more than he could chew.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is like, yeah, he bit off way more than he could chew with this subject.
Yeah.
And you know, I think his editing skills he's obviously talented at editing. He you know, he obviously has, you know, some decent sound equipment, and he can write a script. But this is a big topic, you know, and it's a topic that's bigger than him.
Yeah. And I honestly felt like, I mean, and it takes a while. Like, I mean, that's what I liked about Peter, like the last two videos by Peter Joseph and the Zeitgeist Movement is that kind of accessibility and explaining things. Like, I felt like this video was kind of taken like that, but not very well done. But I do think he's kind of on the right track, but he does need to, it is a big topic, and he needs to break it down more and needs to rewrite some of the things.
Well, this is the kind of topic I don't, the thing is, we have to accept that there's certain topics that we can't do on our own.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
and especially, yeah, I mean, we don't even, yeah, I mean, because,
And
yeah, I mean, different countries are at different levels of consciousness, and how to revolution in every country is going to be different.
yeah, I agree with that, Andrew. Like, yeah, it's gonna be different to different circumstances, and I think that taking on such, I mean, I don't, you know, I don't want to disparage it. I mean, I think it's good that he has the ambition to do something like this, but like, it's gonna require, I think it's gonna require like a revolutionary organization to be able to put something like this out in a mature way that's worth presenting, you know? Like, as this is right now, I won't share it.
No.
Like, outside of, you know, the Marxist community. Like, like, I mean, we're obviously sharing it right now, but but I mean, I don't.
I applaud his. I haven't seen the rest of his videos, so maybe I don't know. But I'm saying, like, I appreciate the editing, and I think he is on the right track in like presenting. But yeah, it's lacking in the content and the subject, on the broad subject.
Yeah, but the Marxist community absolutely should help to, you know, and team up to put together videos like this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if Hakim reached out to me or you, I mean, I'm sure we'd both be more than happy to contribute or help or give criticisms before it's released.
Exactly.
You know, but it's going to take more than just one head to put it together. It might take a dozen. I'm not quite sure, but this is it's a pretty ambitious subject.
Yeah. On that note, I think yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah. We'll be back next week, Sunday.
Once in a while.
What's that?
I think we should, you know, hopefully we can go through more of those kind of things, you know, once in a while when we see them around.
Yeah. I thought that was good enough to kind of review, and yeah, we'll be back next week, everybody. 12 p.m. Sunday, at this channel, and you're probably gonna post something on the software on Reddit.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe spend the week trying to like, and then maybe I'm gonna look for a tutorial. If not, I'll try and make it or whatever. But it's a tutorial on this bibliography software, which is really good. I used it all through university, and I used it for these 2 current papers I've been working on and editing, and hopefully eventually post in our subreddit. But yeah,
and also in the
really
subreddit, you posted a paper on I'll just plug it real quick. A paper on basically how Israel was founded by Jewish terrorist organizations, basically a Jewish equivalent of ISIS. And I thought it was a pretty good summary there.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people don't know that. I mean, it was a good refresher for me because the last time I read about it was like probably 20 years ago. So.
Yeah. And it's all sourced by it's all like 80-90% of it is Jewish academics. Right.
So that's pretty good, especially given the present interest in Israel, Palestine. So thanks for watching, everybody. Please subscribe. Please hit the bell. Check us out on Reddit. Give us some feedback, criticism, and we'll check you guys out next week.
Thanks for tuning in.